Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Jamanatira Vanam Shaji Jamanatira Vanam Shaji Vanatira Vanacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanuranjana Jamunatira Vanam Shadi Jamunatira Vanam Shadi Natira Vanacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satsasi Simadas Divine Graces He Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Kirtan's over. Now it's sitting peacefully and quietly, not fidgeting, no restlessness. In the front row, no less. I don't think it's going to last too long. Okay, yesterday evening, we read from Chaitanya Bhagavata, Madhya Kanda chapter 1. And Madhya Kanda comes after Adi Kanda, and Adi Kanda ended with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Diksha from Ishwarapuri and becoming transformed. There were steps leading up to that, which we discussed last night. And Madhya Kanda, he's now back in Navadvip. That recording? In Madhya Kanda, he's back in Navadvip, sharing with everybody his travel to Gaya and what happened during the travel and, little travel journal. But he doesn't get very far because he's very absorbed in thought of Krishna. We heard last night. Everything was just kind of normal until he spoke of the place where Gaya, there's an impression of the Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. And when he said the name of the place, he lost it. He went into a swoon of ecstatic absorption in thought of Krishna, and he didn't get to speak beyond that point. And in a stage of madness, he kept expressing ecstasy, and then fell unconscious, and then came to consciousness, and then, and so forth and so on. And then he said, let us meet tomorrow at the home of Suklambar Brahmachari. Now, Suklambar Brahmachari didn't have a big home. He was a brahmachari mendicant who, similar to, in fact, in Krishna Lila, he's Sandipani Muni, he was impoverished. So his home wasn't a palace. It was quite simple. But just as there was a loving relationship between Krishna and Sudama, a loving relationship between Krishna and Suklambar Brahmachari. And so they met. Now, there was a question from yesterday's discussion, which I said I would do some research on, and so I did. And that is, one of the persons who was requested to attend was Sadashiva. So the question from yesterday was, who was that? Was that Advaitacharya, who is also identified as Sadashiva, meaning, the original form of Mahavishnu in the spiritual realm, and Lord Shiva, etc., or someone else? And from the research that I did today, this morning, there are three possibilities, and it appears it's the third. One possibility is Advaita Acharya, who is in Chaitanya Bhagavata and in Chaitanya Charitamrita as identified as Sadashiva. Another possibility is there's a Sadashiva who is a physician by trade, and so that's another possibility. But the third seems to be more likely, although there's no information about the third, because Sadashiva is mentioned along with others who was his same age. And Advaita Acharya was certainly not his same age. And this royal physician had a son who was his age, so it's not likely to be, the elder physician, Sadashiva. So more likely one of his peers, age-wise, who is also known as Sadashiva. Then another reference, after they met at the home of Shuklambar Brahmachari, it's mentioned that, so I want to expand on this a little bit, he went to the home of Mukunda Sanjaya. Mukunda Sanjaya is mentioned several times in Adi Kanda. And Mukunda Sanjaya was a very wealthy man who also had a son that was Lord Chaitanya's peer age-wise. His name was Purushottama. Mukunda Sanjaya is the person at whose home Lord Chaitanya set up a school after he was trained by Gangadas Pandit. Gangadas instructed him to begin his own, taking students. And so the place that was chosen was actually the Chandi Mandap of Mukunda Sanjay. And his name is mentioned over and over. He was a wealthy man. And specifically, Bhaktisiddhanta says, because he had a Chandi Mandap, we shouldn't misunderstand that he was a worshipper of the demigoddess Chandi. He was a Vaishnava. And he was wealthy. So then next is a little description of Mukunda Sanjay and Buddhimanta Khan. They both volunteered to take all expense for Nimai's second marriage to Vishnupriya. And it was a grand event, and Mukunda Sanjay and Bodhimanta Khan took that expense. So he's mentioned in that regard. So along with the visit to Shuklambar Das Brahmachari, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or now Nimai Pandit, as initiated Vaishnav, went to the home of Mukunda Sanjay, and he and his wife and family were in bliss, and wonderful exchanges and so on. And they were saying how fortunate they were, and he was expressing the kindness of Mukunda Sanjay, and so there was a very special relationship with Mukunda Sanjay. I checked in Gauragonda Desh Dipika to find out in Gaura Leela who was Mukunda Sanjay, and there's no mention. He had some role in Krishna's Leela, but it doesn't say who. It's kind of surprising because he writes, Kavi Karnapur writes of many persons, but not Mukunda Sanjay. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said in Adi Kanda, "You are my eternal associate. Birth after birth, we are together." But it doesn't say who is who. So that's a little report from yesterday, my homework assignment. And now Nimai is this ecstatic devotee, and Gangadas is getting the news that he's become an ecstatic devotee in addition to a superlative student and teacher. And he's going to go visit Gangadas and get instructions from Gangadas. The Lord did not explain, so we're starting with text 143, Madhya Kanda, chapter 1. The Lord did not explain anything other than Krishna. So the students could not understand anything. By the students' request, the Lord began to reveal the glories of the Supreme Lord to them. The students opened their books while chanting the name of Hari. The son of Mother Shachi was greatly pleased to hear this. On hearing the name of Hari, the Lord lost all external consciousness. Then the jewel of the twice-born cast his merciful glance on everyone there. Being fully absorbed in Krishna, the Lord explained the names of Hari in all the sutras, aphorisms, and commentaries. The Lord said, "The holy names of Krishna are the eternal truth. All scriptures explain Krishna and nothing else. Krishna is the supreme controller, the creator, the maintainer, and the annihilator. Everyone, beginning from Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, is his servant. The life of anyone who gives up the lotus feet of Krishna and explains things as separate from him is useless as a result of his false statements. The philosophies in all scriptures, headed by the Agamas and Vedanta, describe the wealth of devotion to the lotus feet of Krishna. Teachers, bewildered by the illusory energy of Krishna, give up the devotional service of Krishna and take to other paths. Lord Krishna is the ocean of mercy, the life and soul of the universe, the lover of his servants, and the darling son of the cowherd Nanda. Even if one studies all the scriptures, if he has no affection or inclination for the name of Krishna, he is certainly degraded. If a poor, fallen person takes to chanting the holy names of Krishna, he attains the abode of Krishna, in spite of having many faults. This is the purport of all the scriptures. Anyone who doubts this fact suffers. Anyone who explains the scriptures without referring to the worship of Krishna is a fallen soul who does not know the purport of the scriptures. Those who do not know the purport of the scriptures yet teach them to others are simply like asses carrying the load of the scriptures. People obtain death and destruction through such study of the Vedas, and as a result, they are deprived of the festivals of Lord Krishna. The Lord awarded liberation to Putana, yet people still leave aside Krishna to meditate on others. For what happiness will someone give up the glorification of He who delivered the most sinful Aghasura? The entire world is purified by the name of Krishna, yet wretched living entities abstain from chanting His glories. Even the demigods, headed by Brahma, are overwhelmed by Krishna's festivals, yet people give up such festivals and take pleasure in inauspicious dancing and singing. The holy names of Krishna delivered Ajamila, yet those who are intoxicated by wealth, good birth, and education do not know Him. Oh, brothers, please hear my truthful statement. Worship the invaluable wealth of Krishna's lotus feet. Oh, brothers, may you all desire to attain the same lotus feet that Lakshmi desires to serve. The same lotus feet by whose worship Lord Shiva has become known as a pure servant, and the same lotus feet from which the Ganges emanated. Who in Navadvip has the power to refute my explanations before me? Vishwambar is the supreme Brahman. Mother Sachi asked, "My dear son, what books did you study today? Did you quarrel with anyone?" The Lord replied, "Today I read about the names of Krishna. The lotus feet of Krishna are in fact the reservoirs of transcendental qualities. Hearing and chanting about the qualities and names of Krishna is the truth, and the servants of Krishna Chandra are also the truth." This is with a capital T. The literatures that glorify devotional service to Krishna are true scriptures. Others are simply atheistic. One should never hear a scripture or a Purana that does not prominently describe the devotional service of Hari, even if it is recited by the four-headed Lord Brahma. He quotes a verse, "A Chandala is not a Chandala if he chants the name of Krishna, and a Brahmana is not a Brahmana if he engages in sinful activities." Whatever the Lord Kapila had previously instructed his mother, he now instructed to his mother again, in the same mood. Note, this is this avatari understanding. Sometimes Mahaprabhu exhibited this, and sometimes that, sometimes the other mood or feature. So now we're hearing it's the Kapila mood. "O mother, please hear the glories of devotional service to Krishna. Be attached to Krishna in all respects. O mother, the servants of Krishna are never destroyed. Even the wheel of time is frightened by the sight of Krishna's devotees. O mother, Krishna's servants do not undergo the tribulations of residing in a womb, taking birth, or dying. Krishna is the father of the entire universe, and anyone who does not respect his father is rebellious and sinful, and therefore subjected to miseries, birth after birth. Dear mother, please hear attentively about the destination of the individual soul and the volume of distress he suffers by not worshiping Krishna." And there's a whole page of, I hope he's enjoying his prasadam as he's speaking about Krishna. "The living entity repeatedly dies and suffers the miseries of confinement within the womb. The reactions to his sinful activities manifest in every one of his limbs. All the bitter, sour, and salty preparations that the mother eats creates a great inconvenience to the body of the child within the womb. The worms within the mother's stomach bite the tender flesh of the child, yet the child is unable to drive them away and continually burns with pain. Being encased within the hot ribs of his mother, the child cannot move, yet he survives by the arrangement of providence. Some most sinful persons do not even take birth. They repeatedly enter and die in womb after womb. O mother, please hear attentively about the fate of the living entity. At the end of 7 months, the living entity develops consciousness. At that time, the living entity remembers his previous sinful activities and repents. He sighs deeply and offers prayers to Krishna. Oh, Krishna, life and soul of the universe, please protect me. Other than you, to whom can a living entity submit his sorrows? O Lord, one who binds someone can alone set him free. Therefore, O Lord, why do you deceive one who is dead by nature? I have wasted my life in vain seeking pleasure in wealth and children. Thus I have not worshipped your priceless lotus feet. Where are the sons that I raised through endless sinful activities, now gone, leaving me alone to enjoy the result of my deeds? Now, who will deliver me from this miserable condition? O Lord, you are the only friend who can deliver me. I have therefore understood that your lotus feet are the truth, with a capital T. Oh, Krishna, I take shelter of you, please protect me. Giving up a desire tree like you, I became maddened and took to sinful life. Oh, Lord, you have certainly awarded me proper punishment, but now please bestow mercy on me. Be merciful to me, so that I may not forget you, wherever I take birth and die. Any place where your glories are not heard, where the Vaishnavas do not advent, and where there are no festivals for your pleasure, I do not wish to live there, even if it is in the celestial abode of Indra. An intelligent person does not take interest in a place, even in the topmost planetary system, if the pure Ganges of topics concerning the Supreme Lord's activities does not flow there. If there are not devotees engaged in service on the banks of such a river of piety, or if there are no festivals of Sankirtan Yajna to satisfy the Lord, especially since Sankirtan Yajna is recommended in this age. Now that was not what he said, but it was the translator inserted that little clause. I do not mind the miseries of living in the womb, provided I can constantly remember you, O Lord. Grant me the mercy that you will not send me to any place where remembrance of your lotus feet is absent, O Lord. I have suffered this way for millions and millions of births, simply as a result of my karma. O Lord, may those miseries and dangers come again and again, as long as your remembrance, which is the essence of all the Vedas, remains intact. O Krishna, please favor me with your service, and keep me at your lotus feet as the son of your maidservant. If you once deliver me from this miserable condition of life, then I will not desire anything other than you. In this way, the child constantly burns within the womb of his mother, yet he nevertheless likes that situation because he can think of Krishna. By the influence of his prayer, the child does not feel distress in the womb, and in due course of time, he reluctantly comes out. Oh, Mother, now he's again speaking to Mother Sachi, please hear attentively about the living entity's condition. He loses consciousness on touching the ground. Sometimes he loses his consciousness, sometimes he cries, and sometimes he sighs, unable to say anything. He floats in an ocean of misery. By the illusory energy of Krishna, the servant of Krishna suffers in this way if he does not worship Krishna. In due course of time, the child develops intelligence and knowledge, and if he worships Krishna, he is surely fortunate. But if he does not worship Krishna and takes to bad association, then he again sinks into the depths of sinful activities and delusion. If, therefore, the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people, engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. For one who has never worshipped the lotus feet of Lord Govinda, how is it possible for him to live in comfort and die in peace? To live without poverty and die peacefully One must worship and remember Krishna. Therefore, O mother, worship Krishna in the association of devotees. Think of Krishna and chant the name of Hari. There is no substantial result in activities that are devoid of devotion to the Lord. Such non-devotional activities simply result in violence to others. In this way, the Lord, in the mood of Kapila, instructed his mother. Upon hearing his words, Sachi merged in ecstasy. Whether eating, sleeping, or remaining awake, the Lord did not speak of anything other than Krishna. When all the devotees heard from their friends about this, they discussed together and began to contemplate. Has Krishna manifested in his body? Is this the result of devotees' association or because of previous purificatory processes? As the devotees contemplated in this way, their hearts filled with happiness. The devotees' distress was vanquished, and the atheists were uprooted, as the Supreme Lord Vishwambar manifested himself. In the mood of a Vaishnava, Mahaprabhu Vishwambar constantly saw Krishna present everywhere in the world. He heard the names of Krishna both day and night, and he constantly chanted the name of Krishna Chandra. It keeps going. The same Lord who was once absorbed in the taste of scholastic pastimes did not relish anything now other than Krishna. In the early morning, all the students would gather for studies. When the Lord of the three worlds began to teach, nothing other than Krishna came from his mouth. The students asked, "What is the meaning of Siddha Varna Samanaya?" The Lord replied, Narayana is situated in every letter of the alphabet. The students asked, "How were the letters of the alphabet perfected?" The Lord replied, "By the meaningful glance of Krishna." The students asked, "O Pandit, please explain properly." The Lord replied, "Every moment remember Krishna. I am explaining to you about the worship of Krishna, which is the purport of the beginning, middle, and end of all Vedic literature." Hearing the Lord's explanation, the students began to laugh. Some remarked, "It appears he is affected by an imbalance of life airs." The students asked, "From where did you get this explanation?" The Lord replied, "This is the verdict of the scriptures." The Lord said, "If you cannot understand now, then I will explain to you in detail this afternoon. I will go sit in a solitary place and look at my books. Let us meet together in the afternoon." Hearing the Lord's words, all the students packed up their books and left. All the students reported to Gangadas Pandit everything that Nimai had explained to them. In every explanation that Nimai Pandit had given recently, he explains Krishna as the meaning of every word. Quote, "Since he has returned from Gaya, he does not mention anything other than Krishna in his explanations. He always chants the name of Krishna, and the hairs of his body stand on end. Sometimes he laughs and shouts loudly as he manifests different moods. Every day, he takes the dhatu, the verbal root, of every word and explains Krishna through grammatical rules. Oh, Pandit, we are unable to understand his present characteristics, so please tell us what to do." Hearing the student's words, the Brahmana Gangadas Pandit, who is the crest jewel of teachers, burst into laughter. Gangadas said, "Go home now and return soon. This afternoon I will instruct him. Then he may teach you properly. You may also come with him in the afternoon." All the students happily returned to their homes, and in the afternoon they came with Vishwambar to the house of Gangadas Pandit. The Lord took the dust from the feet of his guru, and his guru blessed him, saying, "May you attain knowledge." The Lord's teacher said, "My dear Vishwambar, please hear my words. The studying of a Brahmana is not the result of being less fortunate. Your maternal grandfather is Nilambar Chakravarti. That's Sachi's father, your maternal grandfather, Nilambar Chakravarti, and your father, Jagannath Mishra. Your father is Jagannath Mishra Purandara. They are no fools in either your maternal or paternal families. There are no fools in either your maternal or paternal families, and you yourself are most qualified to explain the commentaries. If by giving up studies one becomes a devotee, then your father and grandfather are not devotees? Remember all this, practice your lessons properly. Only through proper study can one become a Vaishnava Brahmana. How will an ignorant, twice born, know what is proper and what is not? Knowing this, you should chant the name of Krishna and concentrate on your studies. Go now, but promise me that you will teach the scriptures properly, without any different meanings. The Lord said, by the mercy of your feet, no one in Navadvip can stand before me in debate. Who in Navadvip can refute my explanations of the sutras? I will teach publicly in the middle of the city. Let me see who has the power to challenge me. And there's less than a page left. Gangadas became pleased on hearing these words of the Lord, who then offered respect at his guru's feet and departed. I offer my humble obeisances at the feet of Gangadas Pandit, whose disciple is the Lord of the Vedas and the master of the goddess of learning. Who else is there to be attained? What else is there to be attained by Gangadas Pandit, whose student is worshipped throughout the 14 worlds? As Vishwambar walked along with his students, he appeared like a full moon surrounded by the stars. He, whose lotus feet are kept in the heart of Lakshmi, came and sat at the doorstep of a local resident's house. Wearing his cloth like a sannyasi, the Lord repeatedly established and refuted sutras. The Lord said, in Kali Yuga, one who does not have any knowledge about the conjunctions of words is awarded the title Bhattacharya, and one who has no knowledge of grammar is engaged in explaining logic. But none of them can defeat me. Who can challenge the way I refute and reestablish a sutra? In this way, Vishwambar, the Lord of the universe, spoke. Who has the power to answer his challenge? The pride of those teachers who heard such words as they passed by on their way to take bath in the Ganges was smashed to pieces. Who in Navadvip has the power to establish a conclusion before Vishwambar? And the last sentence. In this way, Vishwambar was absorbed in ecstasy as he continued to give his explanations well into the night. As we said yesterday evening, Vrindavan Das has a certain mood. It's a mood of ecstatic love. And he makes no pretext to do anything, present anything other than his mood. Hearing this is quite different than hearing Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, personality-wise, his mood is different. He's on the topmost platform of devotional service, and there's variety amongst those who are on the topmost platform of devotional service. Krishnadas is Kaviraj. He's very learned, and his explanations are very reasonable. And whenever he asserts something, he explains that something in different ways and takes on, those that don't understand may think like this or say like that, and addresses it. And he's very scholarly. So it's in one sense, that's a reason why Srila Prabhupada chose to translate Chaitanya Charitamrita, is to prepare us, his followers, to shastrically understand Lord Chaitanya, because otherwise, how is one going to understand him? Other than just having a lot of faith in the authorized representative of Lord Chaitanya, Vrindavan Das Thakur, the followers of Lord Chaitanya loved him. They didn't need, the verification, justification, explanation. They just received his outpouring of ecstatic expressions, which were accepted as being authorized. We discussed this yesterday. And they are authorized. They are transparent. He just heard these descriptions again and again, and he was empowered by Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda directly requested his disciple, Vrindavan Das, write this. So he did. It's a detail, but the initial writing was called Chaitanya Mangala. Later, Krishna Das Kaviraj wrote Chaitanya Bhagavata, Chaitanya Charitamrita, but Lochan Das wrote another book that he called Chaitanya Mangala and said Vrindavan Das's book should be called Chaitanya Bhagavata because he's the Vyasadeva of Gaura Leela. And as Krishna Leela is Bhagavat Purana, this should be called Chaitanya Bhagavata. And Vrindavan Das accepted, all the Vaishnavas accepted, so the name of the book changed, Chaitanya Bhagavata. But Vyasadeva also, superlatively explained things. But Lochan Das, like Vrindavan Das, makes no attempt whatsoever to explain things. Just ecstatic expression after ecstatic expression after ecstatic expression. Those found in Chaitanya Bhagavata are particularly appreciated as, say, authentic or authorized. What happened and who said what to whom is, in our sense, it may sound like exaggerations, but it's not. It's what happened. We didn't have cameras, didn't have, digital cameras to take movie pictures of things. Some of you, I expressed this yesterday, so I'll say it again because it fits this particular aspect of Vrindavan Das. One of the GBC strategic planning interviews connected with promoting Chaitanya Charitamrita and Gaura Leela and Gaura Tattva and so forth and so on. There was an interview by Vaisheshika Prabhu with Ramaswar and Dhriti, who was one of the artists, who started in this Chaitanya Charitamrita, known in ISKCON as the book marathon. One of the images shown was when she first met Prabhupada. He had just arrived in Los Angeles from Hawaii, and she was seeing from the balcony, and she explains she was trained in art school because she was a high school kid. That when she was still a teenager, before finishing high school, she moved to Los Angeles to become part of the art department in this whole project. And so she said she was trained to capture the moment by sketching real life situations. That was the training that she had received. So she sketched Prabhupada. Now, in our modern situation, we would get out your camera or your phone to take a picture. But it didn't have that facility. So it was just a sketch. And there's Prabhupada, and another sketch she showed was Jadharani zonked out with her bead bag in her hand on the art department marathon. So the message, a major part of the message was there was a mood of the flow of mercy from Krishna through Prabhupada into this book marathon that everyone felt. And they were just lifted to superhuman capacities by being on the receiving end of transcendental instruction of Mission Impossible. Like Prabhupada was he saw it as Mission Impossible. Again and again, he referred to this. But he carried the mission, and the Mission Impossible became more than possible. It became manifest. So Chaitanya Bhagavata, the reason for mentioning this is like that. It's otherworldly. It's not normal. And things that aren't normal, there's a tendency to process them as being, it's fantasy, or at least exaggeration. The reality is something less than what's being described. But it's not. I mean, there's certainly the heart of Vrindavan Das that from childhood he heard. And he heard and he heard and he heard, and it was his life and soul, just hearing, because it was just after Lord Chaitanya's manifest pastime. So and he was in Navadvip as a little boy, growing up, hearing and hearing and hearing, because everyone was filled with love of Lord Chaitanya. So he's just pouring from his heart, he's pouring that out in a transparent, known by others, authentic manner. This is what happened. This is what different people said. Lord Chaitanya went here, said this, did that. The ecstasy that we heard in the morning session, yesterday evening session, was, he would repeatedly go from external consciousness to losing it, and calling out, screaming, crying, "Where are you, Krishna?" So and so forth. Now it's with his students, and what the students are used to, like super teacher, and now he's doing something else. So he's trying to do a course correction, or Gangadas Pandit is trying to do a course correction, but you can't contain the volcano, and his emotions were like that, just uncontainable. And the students didn't know what to make of it, because they had some, of course, one can only imagine when that kind of ecstasy is exhibited, there's going to be a spectrum of responses, some way over there, some in the middle, and some way over on this side, some being swept away, and some being offensive, and that is what happened before his taking of sannyas. The students didn't understand, and they began to criticize. And he began to consider. Now, one of the topics we discussed yesterday, and I'll end with this, is at any point in time, the answer is no. At any point in time, is the Lord other than omniscient? The answer is no. He's omniscient. Now, with that omniscience, there may be, not only there may be, there's a constant flow of bhava, or prema is described as rising and falling of different bhavas, and of those different bhavas mix constantly. That's what prema is. There's the bhava, there's a wave of emotion. And prema is the mixing of those waves, some bigger, some small. Just imagine, picture in your mind the ocean. I found an image to depict this point that I just made, because I was searching yesterday for a different purpose, for Krishna's pastimes. Mother Jasoda was experiencing, the residents of Vrindavan were experiencing the same. The ocean of rasa, bhakti rasa. So it's an ocean where sometimes the waves, and sometimes another wave hits this wave, and then there's little waves, and then there's big waves, and the ocean is like that. And prema is an ocean of bhakti rasa. It's sometimes and sometimes. So the Lord was always omniscient. That's one of his 6 opulences. He's all-knowing. He never became or lost. He's always. But at the same time, there's emotions or bhavas that he's influenced by. He's tasting. And those who he's interacting with, they're also tasting. And then there's different receivers that receive this exhibition and that exhibition of his ecstasy in different ways. And there's a whole range of reactions and responses. But what's constant is his omniscience. And now we're hitting the stage where the student pastime part of his lila has closed, and the ecstatic prema ecstasy pastime is being disclosed. He's manifesting himself. That's what this chapter is called. Go back to the title of the chapter. The beginning of the Lord's manifestation and his instructions on Krishna's Sankirtana. He was consciously and subjectively, objectively and subjectively, manifesting himself, Krishna, in the mood of the devotee of Krishna. And sometimes it would be more calm, and sometimes more ecstatic, and sometimes he would lose any sense of external what's going on in the world. Just a little sharing. Unmada means madness, or the behavior of an intoxicated person. The behavior of an intoxicated person doesn't know what he's doing, and he doesn't feel anything because he's intoxicated. It's not like his neurological system shuts down. He just doesn't feel things. He can bang his head or whatever, and doesn't feel anything. So we heard yesterday, Lord Chaitanya crashed to the ground, but he didn't feel anything. No bruise, no indication of anything. And from Bhagavat Sandarbha, here's a philosophy point. There was a question yesterday evening. Supposing somebody, you asked this question, supposing somebody has attraction for Leela and not so much attraction for philosophy or Krishna Tattva, is it sufficient? And it's a beginning, but it's not complete. So it's not sufficient. So here in Bhagavat Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami is a lover of God, without question. And he's explaining Krishna Tattva. And in the Bhagavat Sandarbha, this is a smidgen of something that's a very long section of Bhagavat Sandarbha that I like very much. Krishna, as Lord Chaitanya, Krishna he's the source of everything. So within Krishna, he's the reconciler, or within Krishna, it's all opposites exist within Krishna. And to clarify that fact, Jiva Goswami points to a verse in Gajendra Moksha Lila, if my memory is right, it's 838, where Gajendra is offering prayers to the Supreme Lord who has appeared before him. And he speaks in a manner where he gives 6 things. You have no birth, you have no activities, you have no name, you have no this, no that, but you do all these things for the pleasure of your devotees. So those are opposites. He has no birth, but he has birth. He has no activities, but he has activities, etc. He harmonizes opposites within him. It's tattva, within the Leela. How do you understand? For example, how do we understand when Mother Jasoda looked inside Krishna's mouth? She was astonished. She says, that which is all around me is inside my son, including me. Looking inside Krishna's mouth and Krishna's mouth. It's not possible. If it's this, it's not that. If it's that, it's not this. It can't be this and that, but it is. Simultaneously. Or trying to because there's this nice verse in the next chapter, 9 from Canto 10, she's trying to bind Krishna, she can't bind Krishna. Then finally she binds Krishna. Then Sukadev Goswami says a very nice verse, which says the same thing. The Lord is all pervasive, and simultaneously he has a human-like size. Simultaneously. Not he's oscillating back and forth between. He's simultaneously. He is all pervasive, and he has a medium size. Medium is Martya Lingam, medium size, human form. Simultaneously. So, back to Gaura Lila. He's Krishna himself. He's all-knowing. He becomes conscious, all-knowing. He's always all-knowing. And then the Leelas are his enjoyment. And also, there's a purpose. We discussed this yesterday. The purpose was edification. He was teaching. What was he teaching? How to love Krishna. How to sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. He was teaching in stages. And he was exhibiting the highest form of Krishna Prema, Braja Prema, in the midst of people that they didn't understand. And he was giving it anyways. And then he would withdraw that. And then he would exhibit it. It's like the waves of an ocean that sometimes, and sometimes, and sometimes, and he was riding on those waves. The waves were from him, but he was riding on the waves in the mood of his devotee, going this way and that way, and sometimes. But the explosion, the eruption, the volcanic eruption of love for Krishna in the mood of Radharani was unstoppable. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And growing and growing and growing to unprecedented heights. that I got off on this track is we may hear this and go, it's exaggeration, right? It's fanciful, right? Reassure me, it's not really like that. It's like, he's just an ecstatic devotee that's going off in some ecstasy, and it's really not like that, right? Within Krishna and within Lord Chaitanya is everything, and he's come to display the how-to. And the emphasis in this part, he's manifesting who he is, and he's giving teachings about the name. And this is just after initiation with his students. What to speak of later. It's the Yuga Dharma. That's one of the reasons, one of the 3 external reasons to establish the Yuga Dharma. And then there's the internal reasons, and they're running parallel. It's otherworldly, and it's not exaggeration. That's a big pill. We love it, but how much, frankly, how much do we understand it? But it's meant just as repeatedly, because the commentaries of Srimad Bhagavatam from our acharyas is abundant. And again, the reason for Krishna's appearance is again and again repeated. And of course, one of them is to reciprocate loving exchanges, which is what he's doing with Shuklambar, with it's everybody. He's reciprocating with everybody. His mother, Vishnupriya, Gadadhar, et cetera, et cetera. Different loving relationships. Mukunda Sanjay and his family, different he's reciprocating with them and churning their love, but drawing their love to Krishna. To him, of course, but to Krishna's name. And that's what it's meant to do for us too. If we hear, as Vrindavan Das heard, he didn't see. He heard. And that opportunity is there for us. That's why I'm enjoying going through consecutively in Chaitanya Bhagavata it's like, there's no hands on the steering wheel. It's just, Vrindavan Das being ecstatic and going for a ride. Of his heart's attraction to Lord Chaitanya and drawing our hearts to that attraction he has for Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. He has such love for Nityananda also. But specifically, the instruction was write a book glorifying the activities of Lord Chaitanya. So that's the focus, and Lord Chaitanya is right there. Lord Nityananda, is right there. And the devotees. And then he just sails along with this ocean of bhakti rasa and watching the waves rise and then moving to the next wave and then another, then another. It's definitely transcendental literature, not so readily understandable with our little binary processor. Doesn't compute. Therefore, Chaitanya Charitamrita helps especially because our binary processor is padded in many ways, and the reasoning faculty is addressed. So the two different literatures, same object, Lord Chaitanya. See if there's some discussion. different kind of a class than we normally
Hare
discuss.
Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
Uh, it's, as you said, it's a really deep. It takes a lot to get more deeper into this philosophy. But just a reflection, come clarification,
Okay.
person.
Fine.
It all boils down to the connection, what we establish, whether it is through Krishna or Radharani, whoever we are connected to. And maybe it also to a pure devotees where we are associated. The clarification question is how we have the different waves as we just discussed. Like sometimes we'll have a very peak
Yeah.
wave and sometimes it will vary the. So it's all like how we are connected at all the time, whether it is through jnana or through our past karma. Is
Through jnana or what?
Is our past karma what we accumulate, how how our realizations are? That will establish.
Well, it's not jnana as a 0, but the 10 is faith. It's resting on faith. And faith is intrinsic to every soul, and faith awakens according to association. And according to faith, we'll get realizations, and we'll process things differently according to faith, not according to gyan. Gyan has a role. Where starting. I've been going down the path of Uddhava Gita with morning classes. And in the beginning 3 chapters of Uddhava Gita, it's like a hammer. And the hammer is knowledge produces detachment, gyan vairagya, that is meant, the gyan vairagya is meant to enhance bhakti. And because there's an obstacle for bhakti, which is attachment to the temporary. So how do you become detached from the temporary? Gyan, vairagya. So that it becomes attachment to the eternal becomes more possible. It's secondary. It's not a limb of bhakti. Faith is at the essence of bhakti, or say it differently. Bhakti is simply that the 9 stages of bhakti is just stages of faith. So where we are today, those persons who we are attached to, etc., and how we process what we hear and our experiences of life, how we apply what we hear, is very much a factor of faith. Now, one of the things that Prabhupada did is he developed a core of persons that had unbridled faith in him. No boundaries. And when there were some boundaries, he would smash the boundaries. With the right people at the right time and so forth. And that was in the Your Ever Well Wisher, that was one of the interviews of, I think, Tom Hopkins said when he met some devotees, apparently with Satsrup Maharaj, because he said they had such. He was told by this young man that he's read magazines, but he knew nothing about publishing. He's supposed to start a Back to Godhead magazine, and he was thinking, how's that possible? He doesn't know anything about publishing, but he was convinced. Then Hopkins said, then I went to New York and I met the founder. Then I understood. They have unbridled faith. And then, nothing's impossible. So faith is the resting place of realization. Yadrashi yadrashi shadha tadrashi siddhi bhavati tadrashi. This is Brahma Samhita text 61. Yadrashi yadrashi shraddha. Yadrashi is like yavat tavat, whereas this, then that. According to faith, siddhi bhavati, Bhakti Siddhanta's translation. Realization bhavati, manifests. So we process things and we're attracted according to our faith. And bhakti rests on faith, supposing one doesn't have faith in Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter, divisions of faith. One will have faith in something else because it's of the soul. And when that soul is resting on something that's transcendental, it's faith in Krishna. And that which we're attracted to is dependent upon the faith. And Krishna will send something that will help us nourish our faith. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
It's not Gyan dependent. It's faith dependent. And then bhakti is nourished by those resources that Krishna sends that are meant for nourishing faith. Now, I started on explaining something earlier. I didn't complete the thought. And then the umada, madness, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exhibiting madness. So in the Bhakti Sandarbha reference, that Krishna has no activities, but he has activities. He explains this way, that by definition, karma is a man that is feeling unfulfilled does something to feel fulfilled. Fruitive, I want, so I do something because there's a want. I'm feeling unfulfilled. And karma is in pursuit of this unfulfillment. And how many people in this world are feeling unfulfilled or lonely or something? Passionate, greedy, lusty, something. Karma. Good or bad? Good or bad? And then Jiva Goswami explains, Krishna was like a madman, like a drunkard. When a drunkard does something, he's not trying to do anything. He's just, wandering around and crashing into things, and there's no purpose to fulfill. He doesn't feel anything. So Krishna was like that, his explanation. He wasn't trying to achieve something. There's something missing inside, so he does stuff. There's no karma. No, and when we're used to saying, no, it's karma-free, but that was his explanation. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like that too. Why was he doing what he was doing? He was like a madman. And that's what he said. That's what he said to Prakashananda Saraswati. I went to my spiritual master and said, I'm experiencing these emotions, and am I doing something wrong? No, it's good. Then he quotes this verse. Narada speaking to Vasudeva, saying this is the fruit of mature stage of devotional service. One becomes like a madman. Madman, people think they're deranged. And people were thinking, maybe he's gone mad. His mother didn't understand. The students didn't understand. Nobody could understand. He was like a madman. But it was a transcendental madman, not the intoxicated, brainless madman that doesn't know what they're doing. Mami kam sharanam. He was teaching. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So, Jnana and Vairagya, so that when one is has a really...
When one is what?
When one is really at knowledge jnana and vairagya, then the bhakti develops.
Not exactly. Gyan and Vairagya are not a cause. Bhakti is the cause.
Correct. So it's other way around.
Well, they're not limbs of bhakti. They're not the causes of bhakti. They have a function. The function is addressing obstacles due to avidya. The root cause of suffering, this is a Prabhupada sutra. The root cause of suffering is ignorance. That's avidya. So how to remove that avidya, the root cause of suffering? Knowledge. But knowledge that's not connected to bhakti is another avidya. It's so-called knowledge. Right? Ishopanishad, you've taken Ishopanishad course? Vidyam cha yas, so-called knowledge. Those that know the Vedas or know stuff, PhD, they're, in the language of Bhagavad Gita, mayaya pritagyana, or mudha. They're not, it's not real. So, knowledge that removes attachment to the temporary can leave you as an impersonalist. If you really develop that, if that's really, you get, that high on the mountain. But it's not sustainable. It's not really what the purpose of knowledge is. The real purpose of knowledge, the real knowledge is removing the obstacles, the attachments to the temporary so that one can become attached to the eternal. They're assists or assets for bhakti. But without bhakti, it's so-called knowledge, or it's another variety of avidya. So does that address your question?
Yes, it addresses Maharaj, but now if my attraction is not diminishing, material attraction is not diminishing, means where am I lacking there?
What do you think? It means you're holding on to the attachments. Krishna won't force you. He can shake you upside down by your ankles, but he doesn't force you. And knowledge is not a guarantee that there'll be people know things, they still do dumb things. Because knowledge is not sufficient. So what's lacking is insufficient attachment to the eternal, or insufficient attachment to Krishna. That attachment to Krishna comes through association with Krishna Bhakti or Krishna Bhaktas, or the Bhagavad Dharma method is by hearing. So look to the quality of your hearing, starting with the holy name. And and all the other forms of hearing that's part of the Bhagavad Dharma method. And you can look at the other side, the Pancharatrika system, the deity worship. Is it just ring the bell and, so many circles with the incense stick? Or is it with bhakti? So both the Pancharatrika and the Bhagavad Vidhi, or Bhagavad Marg, need to move more to the bhakti position for the pleasure of Krishna in both, rather than mechanical formula for either. Because bhakti is not a vending machine. There's a procedure. We follow procedures of hearing. We follow procedures of deity worship, but there's a purpose behind it. Awaken attraction for Krishna. Dedicate those same activities, the hearing and worshiping, etc., to Krishna. Even with the simple things like offering your food. etc. Using the fruits of your work. Not just, you do it in a theistic way. You take care of your family and you give some charity to the temple and Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. Now, is the bhakti there? So that's where, and how does bhakti increase? By associating with bhaktas and the quality of your hearing. The purpose behind the activity. Okay?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. So I also heard one last
Go
question.
ahead.
Yesterday you were mentioning is that Vrindavan Das Thakur is familiar with Adi Leela and Madhya Leela. He is also Antya Leela hero?
He never went to Puri that I'm aware of. Maybe he went to Puri. But his writing was primarily from his experience with those that had Navadvip association with Lord Chaitanya. And that's the Adi and Madhya. And after sannyas, he goes to Puri, and that's Antya. So he's writing from what he heard, but it's not with the same detail. That's what I meant. Whereas Krishnadas Kaviraj, he also had no association, but he did have association of Raghunath Das. Right? Raghunath Das was with Lord Chaitanya for the major portion of his time in Puri, hearing from Sri Damodar, who was, in the language of our acharyas, the alter ego of Lord Chaitanya, means he understood everything. And Sri Damodar disclosed everything, not only what happened, but what's the inner meaning to Raghunath Das. And Raghunath Das was carrying that treasure to Vrindavan, narrated it under the instruction of Rupa and Sanatan, and Krishna Das was the sponge. And then the devotees said, write it, it'll be lost. So he wrote it. And it was captured. So that's the Puri portion that was not of the same detail or depth with Vrindavan Das. And with the Navadvip portion, he had access to the diaries or kadachas of Murari Gupta, who was one of the persons that Vrindavan Das obviously heard from, but he had his diaries. And with his internal realizations of of the pastimes and the moods and the thises and the that's of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Okay? Different kind of class, isn't it?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for explaining very clearly that how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's very hard for me to understand, but by hearing from you, it's like kind of very easy for me to understand. And my question is that, like, for me, it's enthusiasm is like kind of going up and down.
What's going up and down?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm.
Like kind of hearing
Anishtita bhakti, huh?
So, is that like my hearing part is not that qualitative or?
Yes. Say at the other side, the unsteadiness is due to anarthas, abundance. And the anarthas block the steadiness. So to get to steadiness, the anarthas have to be diminished. That's the anartha nivritti stage. And the way to do that is by hearing. Quantitative and qualitative, both. So improve qualitative and quantitative.
And also I see that in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime, it's like kind of that yes, as you mentioned yesterday also, like that's kind of completely different from other. So as I see, like Krishna is so merciful, and the causeless mercy is flowing towards the devotees, and his loving exchanges also, it's kind of completely out of my understanding. And I see that how I can see that causeless mercy is like how could I see that?
With binoculars. Through the words of our acharyas. One of the sections of Chaitanya Charitamrita that will help you see with binoculars through the words of Krishnadas Kaviraj is Krishna's reflections after his departure. And he considers how people, I came to display my pastimes in Vrindavan, and who's going to understand them? With veneration, they won't. You know, it's not stop being venerable, but that's it. They will not understand. So what to do? I want to bring them into an understanding, and not only understanding, but entrance into. So if you understand the purpose behind, at least conceptually, the purpose behind Mahaprabhu's pastimes, then you can hear better. And you know, slowly understanding will come. Slowly understanding will come. It's not ordinary. And you know, one of the things that's relishable about Ram's Leela is he's very human-like. You know, when Sita's kidnapped, he goes nuts. Oh, you know, like a mundane person might feel if his wife is missing, but it's not. But it looks human-like. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes don't look so human-like. He's giving something. And so it's you know, as the initial question, it's deep and profound. It's hard to understand. But if you understand why he's doing what he's doing, because he's not becoming fully conscious, he's fully conscious. He's drawing our hearts and minds to Vraja Prem. So, with that lens, you hear. He's giving. And his associates are giving. It's very important literature. All right?
Thank you so much, Maharaj. And one more thing. As a parent, it's a kind of maybe parenting question.
What's that?
Parenting question.
Parenting. Okay.
So, mother of two teenagers, it's like very difficult. Like, as I heard from you many times, that showing an example, like exemplary, that helps a lot.
That helps a lot.
Practicing every day, that I don't see that. Maybe that's like kind of instant. Kind of not able to understand, like how can I more put my effort to see that.
There's one element. There's multiple elements to parenting, and particularly parenting of teenagers. And I'm not a parent, but I do understand, at least in principle. And that is communication. And, you know, from the teenager side, it's the transitioning from being dependent to independent. that's really uncomfortable, without detailing. From their side, really uncomfortable. And so from the parent side, the communication needs a major shift. And the major shift is friend, although you're a parent. And they know that. But, there's in the trajectory of becoming independent from dependent, there's the pushback from dependence. So the parent has to shift that dynamic. So it's not, I'm a parent, you're my dependent. Now, in that context, let's talk. The door's closed. Maybe some things, but, some doors are closed, at least. And so how to get those, because how can you, I'm not a parent, but I know it just connect with parents that have the kind of rapport with their children that the door is open. And one person I know, there's maybe others that I don't know, but one person I know has the door is open with their teenager, and they've gone through the formal, certification of parenting counseling, not just grahasta counseling, but parenting counseling. And there's now a certified person, and I've mentioned this several times, persons are reaching out to that individual and finding some help, and specifically in the Department of Communication, how to communicate with teenagers. Because if there's if it's guarded communication or no communication or something like that, then it's you can't. What are you going to do? The doors are shut. There's official this and that, and the doors are shut. What are you going to do? So there's ways to shift from your side, just like the example setting, shift how you connect through verbal and nonverbal communications. It's not like you shut off your emotions. You just communicate differently in a way that's, the door's open. Now, everyone's different. Parents are different. Kids are different. And some kids, they disclose everything. And some kids don't. Some kids are like, the door's shut and got 6 locks on it. So it's not easy, but there's principles that parenting counselors understand, and without going into what those principles are, a name of one person that is good at this and has certification is Nityananda Pran, and he has a teenage son. And the relationship is fantastic, as far as I can see, not just from their side, from his side, their son. Nityananda Pran, you know how to okay.
Thank you so much, Guru.
Okay, not easy for your kids either.
I see that. As you said, by showing an example, that helps a lot.
Yes.
Sometimes, as you said, the doors are closed. That's the part where it's kind of very hard.
So that's where the communication comes in. Without expectation, that's another big one. Because there'll be tests from the other side. Those who are parents know, and those who are teenagers, they know. And there's rules. You don't pry unless you're invited. And if you're invited, then you don't sit, tell them, move over, I'm at the steering wheel. Do this and don't do that. And, that's not going to work. The door's going to lock again. So, parenting. Anything else? Do we have some online? Okay.
Okay, so how can we love something without understanding? For example, I'm not fully aware of my service, but I feel it much as a responsibility and
I feel that what?
I feel much as a responsibility and way of being honest and sincere to Krishna. Never thought of my service as a means of being attracted to Krishna.
For me, there's a big heading that says relationships. And the subheading of the relationships is, we don't know what a loving relationship is. We think a loving relationship is something that a loving relationship isn't. And we try to make something that it isn't fit to something that it is, and it doesn't fit. So because we don't know, because we haven't entered into loving relationships, it bounces. Even if someone extends to us, whatever the age and whatever the dynamic, and we don't know how to respond. And what do you do? Because you have a conception of what it is, but it's not what it is. So what do you do? That's where our Bhagavat Dharma is very, very special, especially if you hear in a qualitative way that's meant for nourishing your relationship with Krishna, restoring your relationship with Krishna. And it does two things, minimally. It cleanses and it awakens. On the example setting, back to what Mataji's question was, Nectar of Instruction, text number 8, in one paragraph, the example setting topic is mentioned on the process of hearing. And the beginning process is to hear, and then it matures, or it can mature. And when it does mature, then it comes to another name, and then another name, and then you're over the top. You're at the stage of perfection. But that's not, it's in a paragraph. It doesn't happen so quickly. But that's the example. The goal is clear. So now back to this cleansing and awakening of what bhakti really is, of what a loving relationship, what any relationship really is. That's not what I think it is, or supposed to be, or my expectations, or misconceptions, and my disappointments because it doesn't match my expectations, and all those things. It's the material atmosphere is very complex. Hearing Bhagavat Dharma process is the medicine. Pavo sadachrotramanobhi ramat. It's medicine through the ear, and it cleanses the heart, softens the heart, and allows us to see what a relationship really is without, our projected expectations of what it's supposed to be. It's nice. Rasam alayam. It's very nice. Anything else? No? In the room, anything else? Give him the microphone. Here's the microphone.
This is from Prasad Rawal Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. How can we love something without understanding?
That's it.
Okay, sorry.
He read it. You understand through lifting your misconceptions of what that something is. We're done. We're done? Anything else here? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.